Hey everyone, and welcome back to Advantage Point, the series where we examine how smarter systems create strategic advantage. Today we're exploring how to deliver high impact tutoring at scale without ballooning headcount or budgets. My guest, Lindsay Wander, is founder of two tutoring companies. WorldWise Tutoring, which has been running for over a decade, at 13 years, I believe, and a 5-year non-profit serving under-resourced students. Lindsay, so great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, and thank you very much for joining. And just before we go on, everyone, remember, like I always say, the questions I'm going to be asking Lindsay are completely unscripted. She has no idea what I'm going to be asking, so everything you'll be getting from her is completely unfiltered and experience rich, essentially. So she doesn't know what I'm going to be asking her, so I know she's going to knock it out of the park. So, Lindsay, who are you?
Who am I?
Yeah.
So, as you said, I am a founder of two organizations. If I was going to say who am I would say I'm a lifelong learner and I am an educator. And as a business owner, I am also a leader. For the two organizations, as you mentioned, WorldWise Tutoring, we're coming up on 15 years. I think we're a little over 13. So I don't know. I can't keep track anymore. There's so many different things going on. And WorldWise Tutoring works with students of all ages, all abilities, all subjects, all over the world. And then, as you mentioned, I also am the founder of a nonprofit that I started in the middle of the pandemic called Educate, Radiate, Elevate. And we provide the same high quality tutoring to under-resourced students at no cost to their families.
Certain stuff. And I suppose the place I'd like to start first is, I mean, what's your hero origin story? What's the moment you realized that tutoring needed to be done differently and decided not just to build one, like you rightly said, but two, especially during COVID? What prompted you to start all of this?
It's definitely been a windy path. I wouldn't say I was a little girl dreaming about being a business owner. That was not the path I was taking. My background is actually more STEM based. I went to college for biomedical engineering and had an internship that involved environmental education and fell in love with education. Probably the moment where I really began to realize how much the education system needed to be reformed was when I became a classroom teacher in low income communities and seeing the dreams of students being unattainable for various reasons, most of them not at their own fault. The education system, in my opinion, is quite flawed. And so as a teacher, I made it my mission to teach differently and to innovate new creative solutions to solve a lot of the challenges that were being faced. And to supplement my income as a teacher, I also tutored. And so that gave me an opportunity to explore a different aspect of what education looked like. Then putting it all together is when I decided I need to start a tutoring company and find a way to impact even more students in a more meaningful way.
Alien stuff. And while you're talking, it reminded me of this movie with Michelle Pfeiffer many years ago.
Yeah.
I can't remember for the
Yeah.
life of me. I can't remember what it's called now, but it reminded me essentially of that. Do you know what I'm referring to? You know the movie I'm referring to?
I do. And when I watched it, I was like, yeah, that's my life.
All right, there
So
you
I
go.
used to
Exactly.
teach, yeah, I taught biology and math to seventh graders in South Central Los Angeles. And it definitely is a work of heart. It was my whole soul was put into it for sure. And it to date was my favorite job. Loved it. I loved my students. I loved their families. It was incredible. But I just felt very much like my hands were tied. There was just a lot of people may not realize how political the education system is and how much red tape there is on the educators, the administrators. There's just a lot of areas where their hands are tied. And it was frustrating that I wanted to help them in ways I couldn't. And so, as a tutor with a tutoring company, I'm able, especially being the boss, to do it the way I want to do it. And that is one of the big incentives for moving in that direction and leaving the classroom.
So,
Not because I didn't like it. I loved the classroom, but I wanted to make a
sure,
bigger impact.
sure. And I'm sure over the years you've refined your processes numerous times. I mean, now you're telling us that your background has been very sort of scientific based. So just Can you just share with us what's the one decision you made early that still pays off today? I mean, apart from you just saying now that you had to move out from teaching into tutoring, although that's where your heart was,
Yeah.
what's another decision that you made early that still pays dividends today for you?
I mean, a big part is because my methodologies were so impactful and so successful, I outgrew myself very quickly. And having a service based company, it was a big leap to hire some other people to deliver a service. It's a lot different than having a product based company. And so it was a big change, not just in terms of hiring someone and trying to identify what I was looking for, but in terms also of training them and monitoring their quality and finding a way to run, and manage tutoring beyond the sessions I was having. So that first tutor I hired, that was hard. That was really hard. And I had a friend who told me, you have to hire someone, the first one will be the hardest. And she was right. And after that one, now it's a breeze. I mean, I can look at a resume and in 3 seconds know if I want them. My onboarding process is extremely automated. And it's super easy for me to scale to have hundreds of tutors at this stage. That's been great. But it definitely was quite a scary leap in the beginning.
Okay, so let's dive into my list of questions here. What one am I going to pick? Okay, so here's one. So you use, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, but I'll replicate what I've researched. So you use standards aligned computer adaptive assessments to pinpoint tree levels. So now for a parent listening, in layman's terms, how does that work day to day, and how does it change the learning plan in week one?
So, one of the things I realized very soon was if I had, let's just say, for an example, a sixth grader come to me and I provided them with a sixth grade diagnostic assessment, several things would tend to happen. One, they would bomb the assessment because they were not at a sixth grade level. Two, they would feel very discouraged and therefore unmotivated to continue because there would be questions they did not know the answer to. When you feel defeated right away, you're less likely to have the motivation to move forward. And so I wanted to find a simple solution to be able to assess the students' current levels in a fun way that still gave me the information I needed. And so I have located several computer adaptive AI implementing technology that assesses the students' present levels in various core competencies like math, language arts, and reading, as well as in some social emotional areas as well. And in layman's term, what that basically is, the program, and I am definitely not the developer of the program, so I can explain it very simply, looks at the way the student responded to a question and determines the next question to give them. If the student answered a question correctly, for example, it will give them a more challenging question next. And if they answered it incorrectly, it will give them an easier question next. And it will give them enough questions to collect enough information to determine their levels. And instead of just saying the sixth grader is not at a sixth grade level because they bombed this assessment, they're going to say the sixth grader is at a third grade level in vocabulary, at a fourth grade level in reading comprehension, and so forth. And it can even take it down to the month of that year. It can tell me 3 months into the fourth grade year. Furthermore, because it is so entailed and deliberate in the questions that it asks the student, it can provide me with a starting point and suggestions of where we should begin with this student, which is extremely valuable for a tutor who does not know this child at all and is about to walk into a first session with the student to have some idea of where do I begin? Where is the greatest area of need? And utilizing that as a tool, not the only tool. There's still observation and parent commentary and a bunch of other resources that we utilize that doesn't technology, but it's definitely a valuable asset to give us additional insight into a great place to begin with a student that we don't know very well yet.
Great stuff, great stuff. And just to try and put into the context of the story, Could you share with us maybe like a recent success story where where the student went from intake to assessment and you're now seeing measurable progress? Like what changed and how quickly did you see it?
That's a very detailed question. At this point, I've worked with thousands of students, so I have many instances of this, and I'll just think of one recently. With the nonprofit organization, we did just finish a term, and our programming for the nonprofit is extremely data driven. So we give them pre assessments and post assessments and actually gauge quantitatively as well as collect a lot of feedback throughout the term for qualitative data of exactly where the student improved and perhaps needed additional support. When we crunched the numbers for our recent term that ended, we had one student who definitely shined in 4 months of tutoring, 18 hours of tutoring over 4 months. He went up 6 grade levels. That's insane. And it was over the
Insane.
summer. Right. And so he was an eighth grader who came to us at a first grade reading level and is now at a seventh grade reading level. So he is still not at grade level yet, but made massive leaps and bounds in that short period of time. And if you look at the tutoring session notes, which we use a software for that as well, that tracks everything and documents it. So it's very easy for us to pull the notes for a student rather than paper and pencil kind of situation. Reading was not the main focus of those sessions. And that goes to show that in working on the cross curricular skills and also the soft skills, in addition to setting up an environment that's really positive to build motivation and engagement, all trickles into several different areas so that we see big successes in the student in multiple areas, even though this student in particular, we were helping him with math. And it was his
Wow.
reading that skyrocketed.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
So,
amazing.
right. But when we gave the assessments, so the parent asked for math, when we gave the assessments, we saw the low reading level. And so we worked on how do we work on the reading and also some of the more social, emotional, and soft skills while tutoring him in the requested math subject. And that is a testimony for the fact that a lot of these skills are cross curricular and are transferable.
It's really awesome. That's absolutely
Mm-hmm.
insane. So well done. And like I'm sure there's reams and reams of story that you could share, but that's really amazing to hear, essentially. And I know obviously from our chat previously, and well, you've mentioned a couple of times already, you're quite tech, you're quite tech savvy, if I did use the word myself. So are there any areas where there's still manual steps between assessment insights and tutor actions, or have you completely
For
automated
sure.
everything?
Oh no. So there's certain things that I would consider my secret weapons and probably the magic of what happens. While I utilize automation and AI in a lot of the logistics and a lot of the management and the onboarding and the data and those kind of areas, when it comes to the aspects that benefit from a human touch, such as picking the tutors to work with. I utilize no AI to scan resumes. I look at them and know exactly who I want, but I can do that in 5 seconds, so I can do that. In terms of training the tutors, there is a lot of autonomous work, but there's still a lot of times when we come together and we have group discussions. That's extremely powerful to have these minds and these educators that are professionals come together and share ideas. You don't get that in other ways, the same way you do when even though it's online, we're still using technology, it's just different. When it comes to matching the tutor with the student, that's me. I am the matchmaker. I can, and this comes from 2 decades of being in the field, identify what's going on with that student and know my educator so well that I can say, this tutor is the one for that kid. And I never have anybody say they want to switch tutors. I mean, it's happened in 13 years. I wouldn't say never, that's not accurate, but maybe 3 times. And a lot of it was mainly logistics, just schedules not matching up, not because they were unhappy with the tutor. And so those are definitely areas that we need a human involved. Furthermore, the tutoring itself, while my tutors utilize a lot of technology in supplementing their tutoring sessions, having this one on one with an actual human that the student can say, I did this I use this tool. I tried this and I'm still confused. Can you please help me? That is very important, not just in terms of relationship building, but also to teach them advocacy and to reflect on their own learning and evaluate their own struggles and resiliency. And there's just a lot of other areas in asking, evaluating how you've learned and asking for assistance beyond what you can find online. They've already tried that and they need more. So there's still a lot of human components. I would say that we use technology with heart is our kind of bottom line.
Yeah, yeah, no, completely agree. I know AI is very swiftly evolving, but I think it's still at the stage where it's used, well, in some functions to augment that human experience and human intuition that it can't just quite match it. So for some processes, it's better for augmentation as opposed to actually replacing. But who knows? I mean, we've all watched some sci-fi movie or the other. Very, very soon, it could be very well do that. But as it stands at the moment, I've really seen it shine both in my helping people and seeing what people have done. It's knowing when to use it to replace and knowing when to use it to augment, which it sounds like what you're doing. So that's really, really great stuff. Okay, cool.
And I have two assistants who work for me, and I found a way to teach them how to do a lot of the things. But like one of the ways I determine if I can use AI is, could I teach this to someone? And I
Mm,
haven't thought, I don't know how I can teach someone what I'm looking for in a resume because it's a feeling a lot of times. I
mm,
don't know how to teach someone to know a tutor because it is a feeling a lot of times. And so that's kind of my gauge for knowing this needs a human component because there is an innate feeling that comes from a lot of it. And it not just comes from years and years of experience, but also I know in my core what I'm looking for in these organizations. And it's not always easy to put into words or teach that to someone else. So that's my indicator of nope, I still got to have the human component here.
sure, sure. I completely agree. And it makes total sense. And still staying on sort of techie and techie stuff. On the back end, you've built with Salesforce and layered automation for onboarding and comms, etc. And then we know, I mean, I know from personal experience that Salesforce does that quite well. But where sometimes do you feel like, I mean, let's just pick on Salesforce, for example, or where sometimes do you feel that you're fighting? Okay, let's not even just talk about Salesforce, because obviously we know that it works well, but without naming a tool, let's just say, think about the tools you use in your head. Where do you feel sometimes you're fighting with a tool or compensating with side workflows for any of the tools in your stack that you're using?
Say, when it comes to my staff, we have, especially with the nonprofit, we have people of all different ages and comfortability with technology. So sometimes we will implement a technology, and I won't name too many names, but like, let's say Slack or Trello or Salesforce. And it is, this is too much. And they kind of freak out about it and they want to go back to the old way. And so, a challenge oftentimes with technology is finding a way to implement it that is not overwhelming and discouraging because a lot of those tools are extremely robust and have so many aspects to it that it can be very daunting. So, almost diluting it down to exactly what we need and simplifying it. We've had to create guides, step by step guides of how to use this technology, for example, to make it easier for them. Technology is great, but it can be scary for someone who's not used to it. But we have to find something that works for everybody because you can't have some people talking in this way or managing a project this way and others doing
Mm,
this way. We got to get everyone on the same page. And so that can be challenging for sure. Another area that's tough is the setting up of that technology, going back to how robust it is and how detailed it is, personalizing it for our needs often takes quite a while and a lot of testing and tribulation and meetings and back and forth. That can be daunting of do we really want to put in all the effort to do this? But my thought process as always, and it goes back to hiring the first tutor, it goes back to hiring the assistant. Yes, it's hard in the beginning, but it ends up saving you time and money in the long run. And so it is worth the effort, but you have to just really make those conversations and those steps very deliberate with that end goal in mind constantly to make sure you're not wasting time and kind of getting lost in the robustness of it all.
Yes, of course, of course, of course. I find, I mean, you're just sort of saying a lot of the things I agree with because, I mean, this is about you, not me, but just to sort of add to what you're saying, before I started what I'm doing now, I spent many years in the UK's financial services sector as a business analyst. So my job really revolved around making sure that businesses knew what they wanted before buying a software or implementing a software. So, because a lot of the times, we have that is it raven or crow? What bird is attracted to shiny stuff? I think it's a crow. It's a crow. Where they're like, we've got this shiny new thing and we've got to do it. And they're just like, well, actually,
Yeah.
once they get it, it either doesn't quite match or it does way more than we need it to. So my job was to say basically, hey, give me a list of everything that you need and let's match it to the
Yeah.
product to make sure that we're building the right thing. And I say that to say that exactly what you're saying in the sense where, it always pays to make sure that, you have a very solid set of requirements. That way, A, what tool is right for you, and then B, what level of depth you want to employ in utilizing it so you don't get lost in the source, as it were. But yeah, I completely agree.
And to be honest, Salesforce was a hard choice because it is intense.
Yes,
But as a nonprofit, we get access to it for free. They just kind of make us pay for support
sure.
to utilize it. And you need people who know Salesforce. You can't figure out Salesforce on your own. And so my solution to that was, all right, bring in people who know Salesforce and have them be our Salesforce team. And so we started out using it at a very basic level as a CRM, customer relations management tool.
Mhm.
But they kept saying, Lindsay, there's more. We can use this as a project management tool as well. And so that is something we're continuing to find ways to utilize it to automate processes like the onboarding of the students, for example, and the email automation that sends to parents, for monthly check-ins and so forth. Uh, but that was the reason why I ended up going with Salesforce. And maybe this is something to think about for people who want to go with the technology is that it does integrate very well. It plays nicely with a bunch of other technology. And so when I am making a choice for technology, I always keep the end goal in mind, but I look for integration a lot because if the tools talk to each other, more, then it cuts out additional processes. And
Yes,
Salesforce is really great at talking to other technology and playing
yes,
nicely with them. And so I
yes.
liked that about it and figured, well, the big picture is to set up more and more and more automation. It's worth tackling this beast, knowing it's going to end up making it easier down the line.
I don't completely agree with everything that you're saying. It makes sense. It's great when you know how it works and you know how to work it effectively because it's a really, really deep tool, but can really perform when used correctly. Okay, so I mean, over the last couple of minutes, we've been talking about your wins, both in terms of students, performance, and sort of wins within the ops side of your business in terms of integrations and getting things done sort of seamlessly. But if you wanted to produce more of those wins you just described for the last couple of minutes across students and more regions, how would you create them? So if I gave you a magic wand, right, and I said, how would you create these wins systematically without adding headcount? How would you do it? So money's not an object. Nothing is an object. The only object that's stopping you is your imagination and your magical powers or powers of science, whichever one you choose to employ. How would you do that without adding headcount?
It's not going to be a popular answer, but it's automation. It is.
Mm.
The more I can automate the processes of recruiting, onboarding, managing the staff, the tutors, the students, the parents, the more I can automate that, the more people I can serve because our focus will be purely on the human component, the tutoring. And so I'm always looking for ways to automate. That is, coming on the end of this year, we're reflecting on how 2025 went, and we are now I just sent out about a bunch of projects yesterday to our teams and said, all right, the goal for the next 2 months is everything we did this year, automate it now. We tested it out all year long. It worked for 10 months, automate it, But I would say the key part of that is we had to test it out first, right? And we had to get the systems in place and make sure those worked on a smaller scale. Now that we're certain they work, now it's time to automate. And now I can onboard hundreds of students at once rather than just 10.
Yeah.
I can analyze the data for hundreds at once rather than have to manually bring the data over. And automation is possible with all of this. It's actually a lot simpler than I thought it was, but a big aspect is bringing in the right people. So I have brought in people on the team who know what we've done before, have that framework and that guideline, and now know what to automate.
Absolutely. Makes complete sense. And
I
as
just
there's a
think that when
part,
people
yeah,
hear
sure.
automation, I think when people hear automation, they think I'm cutting out humans. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that I know that's an unpopular word, but
Mm.
I have to have people set up the automation, right? I have to have people modify the automation. I have to have people who, still ideate and come up with solutions. So it's a different set of people for sure. It's people with higher skill sets, but it still is creating opportunities for people to work.
And you just got to adapt with it. It's like saying, I'm just going to keep using a fax machine. Although the age of the internet is here, doesn't make
Right.
sense, does it? You just have to adapt as with all things. You've got to adapt and reskill and, make sure that you're fitting the current market properly. So I completely hear what you're saying. And again, to even circle back to the further point, the point we're making previously at the part where a lot of AI and a lot of automation is really more about augmentation as it is now, as opposed to replacing effectively. So
Yes.
so use this, it still needs humans, as smart as it is, it still needs humans to tell it what to do and tell it how to work, essentially. So completely agree with what you're saying. Um, okay, here's another one. So obviously, as with all things, I mean, it's a fun exercise saying to you if money was no object. Or maybe it's no object for you, I don't know. But if saying money's no object, what would you do? Which you've described. But thinking about budget, staying on that topic, and even more so limited budgets. If you could remove one budget related bottleneck in your ops, which one of those operations do you feel would give you the biggest return or biggest impact if you could just throw a bunch of cash at it?
Let me make sure I'm understanding the question. So, if I had only one area to spend money on, which one do I think would give me the greatest
Correct.
output in
Yes.
helping me to grow?
Yeah.
Technology. I mean, you're leading me into it. But no, for sure. I mean, the more I can down on the excess costs of time correcting things, of managing people, of repairing systems, the more time and money I can spend instead on improving the programs and getting greater outcomes, spreading awareness to reach more people. There's only a limited amount of money and time, and so I have to, while the goal is always to grow and to work with more people, I I have to think of what will directly bring those in. But at the end of the day, there's still a business to run. There's still financials that have to be assessed. There's still data that has to be crunched. There's still teams that need to be led. There's still things that have happen on the back end. And I think a lot of people don't realize this. This is also true with the nonprofit. The nonprofit is a business.
Mm.
It is not just a group of volunteers having fun and talking about how much they love what they're doing. I mean, I run it very much like a business. And so as much I can cut down the business aspects and get that set up with technology and automation, the more I can focus on improving outcomes and reaching more people.
It's complete terms. Okay. I'm just
So
looking
if I
at.
could throw money at something, it would be, I mean, honestly, it would be bringing in experts who could analyze my processes and set up the technology, because the technology is not always that expensive considering the cost and the outcomes and the amount of money you save, to set up processes that I can improve the back end things so I can focus my time and energy on the front end.
It's like you're sort of saying everything that's in my mind, because that's when I sort of meet with
Yeah.
businesses and we're talking about automation. It's like, oh well, um, you know, it's expensive and I don't know what to pick. And I was like, no, what you really got to think about is that let it do the donkey work, let it do all the manual heavy lifting so you can focus your attention where it can't replace it, like networking or, you know, pitching or whatever the situation might be, like in your case, assessing students and seeing who's going to go with the right tutor, you'd rather be doing that than sort of like typing away in Excel or plugging away at some sort of repetitive ops task. So I completely agree with you in what you're saying in many of the things that you said, really. And it's really, really good to hear someone else say the same things I say to people, essentially, although I've never said anything to this to you at all. So it's really
No,
making me smile. Yeah, it's really making me smile inwards and outwardly hearing you say that. So that's really great stuff. Right. Okay. Wow. Look at the time. It's really flying by. Okay. Just one last one and I'll let you go. Okay. So 2 years from now, what outcomes would tell you both your organizations are winning? And the following part to that is what's in the way right now of that happening from your perspective?
I would say it's different things for each organization.
All right.
But if I was going to clump them together, it would be awareness. Spreading awareness of the organizations is definitely a challenge because, and I think a lot of it has to do with the industry. Typical marketing and advertising methods are not going to work when it comes to a person's child. It's not a t-shirt you're buying. It's not an item for your kitchen. This is your
Yeah.
baby. And
Yeah.
so you're not going to just go off of a billboard you see. You
Of
want to
course.
know this person. And so, as much as I can spread awareness in a way that lets parents know this is not too good to be true, this is actually a great program and it's worth the effort of trying. Check all our data, check all our testimonials, it's there. I think is one of the hardest parts of it. Going back to the technology, the more I can delegate or take other things off my plate so that I can get out there and advocate and advertise and spread awareness of the organizations. That's the way I would solve that problem. Unfortunately, a lot of my day is digging through emails and, doing all the back end stuff. And so I don't always
Right.
have the time to get out in front of people. And so that's again back to the technology and bringing in the right people on your team to handle the back end stuff so I can work on the front end. When it comes to the nonprofit, as most nonprofits, our big issue is also funding. And I would say there's a lot of caveats to that. A big part is the awareness, obviously, but I would like to increase our student numbers more. And I think setting up the automation for the onboarding and all of that will be helpful because we can handle more students once that is finalized and set up, which the goal is by the end of the year. We'll have all that automation perfected, tested, and ready to go going into 2026. So 2026, we shouldn't have any limitations on the time and the manpower it takes to onboard and manage everybody involved with the tutoring aspect of it. And then I think for the for profit, there's a lot of areas there. I'm going to try to say this as nicely as I can. We are living in a very uncertain time right now. There's a lot of changes happening. And I do think it affects people's willingness to make decisions on a big topic like education. They know that something is happening and they know they need to take action, but they're a little indecisive. I would, and I think a big part of this is just to tell people education is very important in these changes that are happening. This is not something that should be put in the backside, and do your research and find whatever is, maybe it's me, maybe it's someone else that can help you with the challenges and the changes that are coming right now because they are happening whether we like it or not, and we need to flow with it. And my organizations are both very aware of everything that's going on and is flexing and adjusting with it. And the goal is to build and create learners who are better equipped for the world. Trying to find the best way to say that without getting too political.
No, I hear what you're saying. And I think that's the thing a lot of the times when there are sort of big motions or big things happening externally, a lot of people tend to freeze and like, well, I don't know, let me see, let me wait till the dust settles. But I think you'll find, and we've been around long enough to know the dust never settles. There's always dust in the air. So you've got to press on with it regardless. So I think we hear exactly what it is
I
that you're
said,
trying,
yes, do not
we hear what it
wait.
is you're
You need
trying to
to
say.
ride this wave. This is a huge changes are happening right now. You gotta ride this wave. You can't just run away from it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Time has really flown by so quickly, Lindsay. It's been a real pleasure having you on and you sharing all your insights and your journeys. Really great stuff. And I have a sneaky suspicion that we'll probably like to invite you again. Because I know, and I think the most painful part for me with these things is that we could never get everyone's experience and knowledge, condense it down to 40 minutes. It's virtually impossible. And I feel there's still lots of things there that we're yet to tap into. So hopefully she'll agree,
Sure,
viewers.
especially
Yeah,
considering this is our main focus right now is the AI and the automation. I'd love
absolutely.
to come back in 2026 and tell you all the things we've done and what's next.
Yeah, you've heard her, guys. So she can't say no when I ask her to come back on again. But until then, Liz, it's been a real pleasure having you on. And again, for everyone else, I'll leave a link to her website in the description. So please go ahead and check it out, especially if you're a parent and some of the things that she's said here resonates with you. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to your children because they're precious really to see what she's about and call her bluff if you think she's bluffing, essentially. But again, to the next episode, guys, have a great day and I'll be back soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.